Hello everyone, Allahu Akbar. The Baha'i greeting to every one of you. Time is 12:22. Oh God. Today is 24th of January. Well, of course you remember I put that video called I Quit. It's proven to me I'm weaker than what I think. So I'm back because of some disturbing matter to me anyways. That I received a couple of emails from two good Baha'is that I felt that not knowingly I might have myself even contributed to that. Usually everything that happens to me pertaining to the matter of faith, even my health, usually I have a vision or a dream. A few days ago I had a vision that Mr. Rouhani has joined me, and he was backing me up. And I know that's true. This gentleman had a dream as a kid, as a child, that Baha'u'llah was on a boat and the ship was sinking, and he was disturbed and was asking Baha'u'llah, and Baha'u'llah told him, wait. It seems the ship of Baha'u'llah is sinking, but not really, because he'll take care of it, as he does about this universe and everything else. But my word to Mr. Rouhani is that we can't be hiding, sir. Matter is dire. I know it. You're not out to know. There's nothing left. If you have serious concern about Baha'u'llah, you have to get up. You have to talk to the other Baha'is in a wise way and write letter to Universal Laws of Justice. These guys, they simply don't know it. They're the reflections of our obliviousness, of our ignorance, and of our complacency. There's nothing wrong with these guys. They're just reflecting who we are. Okay, the reason that I'm bringing this, I had two emails. I knew this before, but these emails are indicative of that. Because this issue of guardianship that I brought up in all my videos, and many people probably before me, has not been solved, and the elements of it is in the mind of every Baha'is. I know that. And they have no solution with it. Like a chronic pain, they just bear it and they take it. But because it is not solved, a lot of people are marginalized and they leave the faith. And the questions arise that even Shoghi Effendi is not respected well. He's not considered as divine as Abdu'l and as Baha'u'llah and as the Bab, which definitely he is. And there's all the reason to prove that. And also it's caused people do not look at the administration in a very kind way. So I know exactly why. Because of these administrators. I call them covenant brokers. You know, that is what Shoghi Effendi says, oh God, save us from the unwisdom of the friends. These friends, oh my God. I cannot tell you how much I'm frustrated with them. You know, after so many years, 50 and odd years, this Mr. Nakhjavani, rotting his soul in the Haifa. Now I've seen few videos of him. He says that there's a problem. Everywhere I go, I see that whether it's in Japan, whether it's in Canada, everywhere, people are only trying to create more administrations. It seems people have forgotten. The essence of the faith is simply, it seems that it's forgotten. That's just saying that, although very late, isn't it? So let's see what these emails are. he sent me something, and then he sent his email back. His name is Joel Borling, I would say. It spells it B-J-O-R-L-I-N-G. Definitely a good Baha'i. It says, thank you very much for your message. I'll try to check those website channels which I told him to look at. But on my computer such things don't seem to come into well. I will agree with you that there are tests in the Baha'i Faith. From what I have seen, there have been tests since the beginning. I've probably been aware of the faith for about 30 years, and even though I have felt very exhilarated about the faith, I have also been very discouraged because of the many conflicts within its rank. However, to reject the faith for the reason is to throw the baby out with the bathwater. There is a kernel of the faith which is good, precious, and worthwhile. And it is worth living and teaching. That kernel is the faith itself and is not the property of any organization. I respect Haifa, but I do not believe that it owns the faith, organization-wise. I am a member of the Reform Baha'i Faith, which is a contemporary expression of the faith. We believe in freedom and oppose fundamentalism and fanaticism. What kind of finding have you discovered about the faith? And the Reform community were not about excommunication people, as Baha'u'llah himself advocated. We believe in the independent investigation of the truth. And something, Joel says here about the Haifa. He says he respects Haifa, meaning the universal laws of justice, but I do not believe that it owns the faith. Actually, I have to defend the universal laws of justice here. On the very first time that in 1963 that it was, started, the very first thing they said is that to the Baha'is of the world, that you should know, I'm just paraphrasing, that we cannot simply create a Shoghi Effendi or a guardian for you. We cannot create successor for Shoghi Effendi. If we didn't do it, it's not our fault. But we're not in a position to do that, or even enact and legislate the laws allowing that. But one thing very important they said in this message, that the Baha'i should remember the faith of God is not administration. They mentioned that there. That administration and all these Baha'i organization assemblies is simply a means, a tool, a ship. The actual cargo is the Baha'i Faith. What's the food is the Baha'i Faith. What saves us is the Baha'i Faith. What gives us soul is the Baha'i Faith. The goal is Baha'i Faith. Administration is simply a tool. That's what the Universal Laws of Justice in 1963 has said to all the people of the world. I don't think they feel that they own the faith. I wish they had any sense of ownership. It's too convoluted for me to say anything about these guys. All I know is that they are the reflections of our oblivion, of our complacency, of our lack of interest and seriousness in whom we are electing. We've done it. Universal Laws of Justice, those 9 guys are not at fault at all. It's us. So, it says, I give him the go and read the book that I've written, a very small booklet. It is called The Look at the Baha'i Faith and the Universal House of Guardianship. And at the very end of it, just about 10 pages, talks about this existence of Universal House of Guardianship and how to do it. And this is his remark again. I have to read it. It's nice. He says, I can't comment much of your statement as you have your ideas regarding the guardianship. The guardianship has been a sore issue in the Baha'i Faith. In the Reform Baha'i Faith, we look to Abdu'l Baha's covenant of 1912. It does not mention a successor, except for an eventual universal laws of justice. He does not mention Shoghi Effendi. There's ground, I think, to question the authenticity of Abdu'l-Baha's will and testament in 1912. When evaluated by a handwriting excerpt, it did not bear the handwriting of Abdu'l-Baha. There is evidence too to question Shoghi's guardianship, and if you look at it, it has not produced any unity in the faith. He excommunicated most of his family, and he created a system in which many people have been hurt. But just look at the enrolled Baha'i website. The way to deal with the differences is make them covenant breakers. The way that has been dealt, I agree, mister, but Shoghi Effendi, based on my study, I have no prejudice at all. He has not caused any of that, and if we have anything and it's still around, it is because of him. I'll prove that too. I will not argue your points, but there's need for a reformation in the Baha'i Faith. In my opinion, the guardianship was a temporal institution. Now it is a mute point. I see Orthodox Baha'is trying to justify it, but now there's nothing to justify. I never heard of a universal institution of guardianship. And really, for all intent and purpose, it's time to put the guardianship to rest. When Shoghi Effendi died, that essentially ended it. Let me say this. I love the Baha'i Faith and what it stands for. I believe in its basic principles. The guardianship is not one of them. Those 24 elders refer to elders in the book of Revelation, nothing more. I have been tempted to choke the Baha'i Faith due to this incessant splintering. Incessant meaning continuously. Incessant splintering of the faith. It is absolutely sickening. It serves no useful purpose. What's needed is a return, not to the guardianship, but to the basic principles of the faith. Frankly, I've heard all I care about the guardianship, but the real question is, what does the faith tell us about life? How does it speak to our world, and how to best teach and share it? That is what the faith needs, not arguing or hair splitting. Enough already. Need not arguing. Baha'is need to be clear on what the faith is. It is not organization or administrative order. It seems of the faith I am an independent, like Julie Chandler and Ahmed Sohrab. I believe that the faith is not an organization, nor does any own or control it. In terms of faith, we worship only God, not an institution. Prophet points us to God, not to themselves. If any prophet says, I am he, reject him. Only God is God. Okay. My Lord, Joel has got a lot more study to do in my opinion, but that's just my opinion, very respectfully. I had another email from Germany. He says, I live in Germany and I want to go to learn an alternative Baha'i reform faith. So, you are one of the alternative Baha'i? All right, please answer me. His name is Nico. Good. So we've got a couple of problems here. First of all, you're hearing of the reforms or, I don't know, some other names I don't know. Followers of Masonry, Orthodox Baha'is. All of these fellows, they don't come up to even be 100 and 200 people. And they're severely disorganized. The Baha'i Faith, as the main stream of the Baha'i Faith, which are a few million, they're all working under universal laws of justice. That is the fact of the matter, and I know it. Now, by the same token, the sheer number of the Baha'is does not exonerate him from the fault they're in right now. From where I stand right now in my studies of the Baha'i Faith, I, the Elder of God, today announce you there is no Baha'is in the world. None. Ideologically speaking, not in the heart. That no one knows. I believe most Canadians and Americans are Baha'is. It's a relative matter, you see. Spiritually, perhaps all the people, majority, most of the people are potentially ready to be Baha'i. Otherwise, why would the faith of God come in? It's not coming for some other planets. Why not embracing it is because of the, problem that we as a Baha'is have. We're actually in the way of the faith of God. If we all quit, it'll go by itself in the heart of many right people. But we are like a dirty pieces on the robe of Baha'u'llahs. We are like cars parked in the parking lot so nobody can come in. Everybody comes in, we just give him one bad look and he will leave the gathering. Most of us are like this. I've seen in Canada. The biggest deterrent of the Baha'i Faith in Canada and in the United States perhaps are the Baha'is themselves. You enter these communities, they're all sick. Nobody can get in there. All they understand, the good ones, I guess they don't come into the administration with just jewels. They've given it up. So ideologically, we don't know what it is. And there's a problem with the Baha'i Faith, unlike the other religions of the past. The religions of the past and the Baha'i Faith, in comparison, is like a shovel and that television. If the shovel's handle breaks, you could use it somehow or other for some use. But if something breaks in TV, it doesn't work. Then you can't use it for nothing else. It becomes just a piece of, garbage, junk. Baha'i Faith is like television. If it is not exactly followed, assembled by the manufacturers, you don't have nothing. Nothing you have. But Islam and Christianity still somehow works, because they're like a shovel. There's not much in them compared to the Baha'i Faith. One book in Christianity, 1/3 of it is from Christ, and few books in Islam. Baha'i Faith is literally 500 books, revealed, revelation, divine books. And the issue that deals is with the whole planet. So, we have a problem here that I'm trying to address. We're going to have to discuss this problem in twofold. First of all, who is Shoghi Effendi? This guardian and the successor of the Abdu'l, how legitimate he is, who he is, and what he has done. As Joel mentioned, his coming and his advent of the Shoghi Effendi has done nothing to the faith but has disunited the Baha'is and this and that. Then we have to talk about whether we do need an administration and can we work without it. We know the book Baha'u'llah, Abdu'l, Shoghi Effendi, everyone has said the Baha'i Faith is with an administration, this time around not by people, but God himself has founded it and has made it, The engineer of it is the very divine figures. But yet, there are questions, that scientifically, what does it do to us? Can we live without it? Could we, could we not? Let's talk about Shoghi Effendi first. So, as I mentioned, I'm so sorry to say this, but there is no Baha'i. Ideologically, there's not a single Baha'i that knows what this is. No one. The Baha'i scholars, the most prominent one of them, that they come from Iran, are the lamest of them all. These guys, they go and get their PhDs and degrees and all in the non-Baha'i institution, agnostic systems, and they come back into the Baha'i faith and they call themselves, I am doctor this, I am an engineer this, I am the head of this, therefore I should be the authority to speak about Baha'i faith. And the man has no idea what it is. Example is a respected fellow who is, I think, the head of the department of the McGill University, somebody was telling me, in the psychiatric department, how big you want it to be. But he was sent, commissioned by Universal Laws of Justice 16 years ago, talked to me. This guy was so out of line. He was totally out. This Mr. Ghavirian didn't know anything about Baha'i. He tells me that you call yourself an imam. I never even mentioned the name. I don't know how did he get it. Is he hearing himself? I said that. So, therefore, stop this issue of covenant breakers and covenant breakings and all these things. I assure you the covenant of the Baha'i Faith cannot be broken. It's impossible to break it. This one is not. Previous one, yes it was. This one is not. But something else can happen to it. It can be forsaken. It could be forgotten. That can happen to it. The entire cause of God could be just gone. Abdu'l says that the Baha'is, they do not unite. Not out of disagreement with the book or the faith, but just because of the disagreement between them, they create two assemblies in one city, and two national assemblies in a country, and finally two universal laws of justice, based on the book. They don't say that we don't love Baha'u'llah or Abdu'l Baha or Bab or Shoghi, everything according to the book, except we don't like their groups. Well, from south, we have our own universal laws of justice. You're from north, you have your own national expression. Abdu'l Baha has seen this. It says that in case of formation of two universal houses of justice, they are both wrong. There he mentions the word of Baha'u'llah. He says if somebody says, I am God, and another says, I'm a messenger of God, and they want to dispute in that, they're both wrong. The essence is unity. It has to be reached. Of course, this unity is not that, okay, in order for me to be united, whatever you say, I'm going to go for it. No, it's not to be deferring to mistakes. That is not what the unity in the Baha'i Faith goes. Unity has to be around the axis of the truth, okay? So as I said, tonight let's talk about Shoghi Effendi. Everyone thinks that Shoghi Effendi is just a boy who never went to jail, who was born, in Akka. He was pampered, very well like every one of us. Didn't see the jail or anything, and went in the West and learned English. And Abdu'l Baha simply appointed him, and because of the appointment of Abdu'l Baha and what Abdu'l Baha conferred upon him, therefore he became guardian. On his own, he's just an ordinary guy, especially because of his appearance. He does not have the classic garment, and the apparel of Abdu'l Baha and the Baha'u'llah, which, we're all accustomed with. When we look at the religion, you got a beard and, robe and everything. And the Taj, where Shoghi Effendi didn't have any of those. And then also he himself, lots of times says, oh, don't call me Hazrat, which means His Holiness. I am not infallible in everything, just matters pertaining to the faith. And there are few statements of him because he was among the Westerners. This is what he had to say, and he wanted to look at it that way. So as a result, people do not really think of him as somebody as divine as Baha'u'llah and as Abdu'l. To your dismay, those who disagree with me, and other Baha'is, maybe they just say that there is something. I'll tell you that right now. Entire prophets, all these things from the beginning of mankind that we don't have even the history of, all of it was that the Baha'i Faith to come today here, as is prophesied by all the religions of the past. But the manifestations of its divine power has been only fully demonstrated by Shoghi Effendi, not by the Bab, not by Baha'u'llah, not by Abdu'l Baha. Surprised, aren't you? Manifest the power that has emanated from Shoghi Effendi is combined power of the Bab and Baha'u'llah and Abdu'l Baha. If you combine all those power, you get Shoghi Effendi. He is the hugest, the biggest, the most elusive of all the divine characters in the history of mankind. No one greater than him has been ever sent by God. No one has manifested the power of God as big as Shoghi Effendi. I'm not being poetic, people. I will tell you why. First of all, the matter of appointment of Abdu'l of Shoghi Effendi is not making him any smaller than Abdu'l. According to clear writing in the Baha'i Faith, Abdu'l and Shoghi Effendi occupy exactly the same office. They are both interpreter, divine and infallible interpreter of writing. They're both head of the faith, both. Now why Shoghi says all those things about himself is simply because, as I told you, he was among the Westerners and he did not find any use for it. This is his strategy. He's showing humbleness, trying to teach us something. But that is the same thing with Abdu'l. Abdu'l has more than 26 titles from Baha'u'llah. He was so big that when he comes in, only in front of one person in his life, Baha'u'llah would get up on his foot. When Abdu'l came inside the room, he would say, Sarkar Agha tashrif avardand. The master has arrived. That's what Baha'u'llah would stand up when Abdu'l comes. He calls him huge, the mystery of God. There are so many of them, and I can't give you exact translation, but there were 26 of them that he calls him. And what did Abdu'l do? Abdu'l actually chose the title that was given to one of the martyrs in Isfahan. His title was Abdu'l. Abdu'l chose that title and says, no, I'm just Abdu'l, I mean servant of Baha. He threw all those things out. Why? Because the strategy required it. Because everybody is thinking that, okay, he was occupying that right now, he's going to get all the funding and all the respect and all this and that. Abdu'l was not after this. So he let go of those things. In his poetry, Baha'i, they can't say it in Iran, they changed it. In one of these lines, he says, Abbas sanaguye to بود. That is what Baha'is they say. But really it is not Abbas sanaguye to بود. It's Abbas sage kuye to بود. He says Abbas is the dog. It's just a dog of Baha'u'llah, he calls himself. Baha'is, they can't take this word. So they say Abbas Sanagu. That means admirer of you, not the dog in English in West is not a bad word. You can call a person dog. In Iran, to say to a person dog is a serious insult. Serious. It's a bad profanity. And Abdu'l gave that himself. He said, I'm just a dog of Baha. These things are there. Do not be baffled. So I am not going to go to what Abdu'l says about himself. I'm going to go to what Baha'u'llah calls him. When he calls him master. When he calls him the Gulf branched from the ancient ocean. And many others. The Joseph of Baha. The apple of the eye of the Baha. So many things. But Abdu'l used that. The same story is about Shoghi Effendi. Read what Abdu'l says about Shoghi Effendi. He says, everything he says, it is from God. You want to talk to God, that is Shoghi Effendi. This is right in the Will and Testament. Everyone, including the member of Universal Laws of Justice, they have to obey him. He calls him the sign of God. You know what that is in original word? Ayatollah. This word Ayatollah comes from the Baha'is. Muslim, they pick it, they stole it and they use it. Before they didn't use the word Ayatollah. Ayatollah means the divine sign of God. He is the reason God is there. Who is the sign of his existence is Shoghi Effendi. That's what Abdu'l calls Shoghi Effendi. So, but it is before matters, even when we talk about Shoghi Effendi, matters deeper than that. You've read it. It's in the Bible of the Isaiah. I think chapter 11. He talks about at the day of resurrections when, everything's, the wolf, and the lamb, they get together and all that. And he says at the end, he says, and a boy, a lad, will rule over them. That is Shoghi Effendi. In Islam, it's the same thing there too. And these scholars of the Islam have not known about Christianity and what the Christians are. I have this. I got it from the internet. Not bad to read it. This reference, it was in the internet, by the way, guys. The reference is to Isaiah 11 verse 6. Isaiah 11:6. The wolf also shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the kid, and the calf and the young lion. And then it says, and a little child shall lead them. So Miss F. Drayton of New York asked Shoghi Effendi, asked Abdu'l, what is this, the story of the child? It's written here. It says, Inna zalika tifl mawludun mawjudun wa mawludun in Arabic. And translation, verily that child is born and is now existing. In a compilation of the tablet and account related to 9 holy days available now on the reference Baha'i library, the late Ashraf Khavari, which is the biggest scholar of the faith, points out to the Islamic prediction that a young one whose name begins with the letter SH will sit on the throne of the guardianship. فَمِنْ بَعْدِهُ يَحْكُمُ الصَّبْيُ صَاحِبُ الْوَجْهِ الْبَهِي يَجْلِسُ عَلَى حرف سرير حرف شين, something to that effect, which is then after him, which is Abdu'l, a boy with a glorious face. Wajh Bahi, Wajh means countenance, Bahi means Baha'i, glorious face. Whose name starts with the letter She, will rule. So it goes, more light is thrown on the subject by the diary of the Yunus Khan. Also Mr. Yunus Khan was asked about this too. Abdu'l says, we have spent 3 months in Akka with Abdu'l during 1897 and returned 1900 for a stay of the many years. From his word we infer that perhaps due to the news having reached the West that a grandson had been born to the master, a believer in America, Mrs. F. Drayton, D-R-A-Y-T-O-N, had written to him that in the Bible is mentioned that after Abdu'l a little child should lead them, Isaiah 11:6. And does this mean a real live child who exists? Dr. Yunus Khan was not aware himself in 1897 that these questions had been put, and that Abdu'l had revealed the following tablet in answer to it. O maid servant of God, Abdu'l says to Miss Drayton, verily the child is born and is alive and formed, and from him will appear wondrous things that thou wilt hear of in the future. Thou shalt behold him endowed with the most perfect appearance, supreme capacity, absolute perfection, consummate power, and unsurpassed might. What do you want to hear more of Abdu'l Shoghi Effendi? His face will shine with a radiance that illumines all the horizons of the world. Therefore, forget this not as long as thou dost live, inasmuch as ages and centuries will bear traces of him. upon bid greeting and praise Abdu'l Baha Abbas. So, Abdu'l Baha, not just in the Will and Testament, but also, as I just read it for you, many scholars of the time have spoken of this, including Marzieh Gale. So it's not so much that we have this Will and Testament of Abdu'l Baha. Now Joel and some other people trying to question the translation of this or the existence of it. I wish universal laws of justice would bring an exact handwriting of Abdu'l Baha, of his Will and Testament, on its original, and just put it on the internet, along with the other ones. So this kind of, please, serious, stupid questions not arise that this is not the writing of Abdu'l Baha. And or if the translation is wrong or something. So, it's more than one. By the way, in no religions ever that I've ever read, no successorship, whether in Islam or Christianity, has been as clear as it is in the Baha'i Faith, or in the Baha'i Faith is as clear as Abdu'l Baha talks about Shoghi Effendi. He was so disturbed and perturbed when he was coming to the United States. In Italy, they did not let Shoghi Effendi to come along with him. His love towards Shoghi Effendi and the respect about Shoghi Effendi was always there. There are many tablets, you know. Now, if we come and question Shoghi Effendi, we have to have some reasons. If you're thinking Shoghi Effendi is guardian of the faith because Abdu'l Baha said so, you're wrong, my friend. Shoghi Effendi, as I told you, has manifested such powers that if you put the revelation of the Bab and Baha'u'llah and Abdu'l Baha combined together, will not suffice that. How do I come up to these projections? See, the entire revelation of the Bab that I have read, purposely, he has made it incomplete. Purposely. He says Bayan has to be 19 chapter, he leaves it about 11. Arabic Bayan, same thing. Pancham, 5 modes, it's the same thing. Most of his work, he purposely makes it not completed. So the Babis cannot follow it, basically. So they have to turn to Baha'u'llah. So the Bab has given his life only so that Baha'u'llah can reveal his mission. Because they were not afraid of Bab, they martyred Bab, but as soon as they martyred Bab, a couple of Babis, they put some pellet gun in them and shot their king. The matter became so big that they were afraid of Baha'u'llah, that if they kill him, what will happen? So the regime was afraid of Baha'u'llah because of the Bab. They sent him, exiled him to Iraq and his followers. Their plan worked because Baha'u'llah went and all followers went, basically. But the Ottoman government, they put Baha'u'llah in jail, so we do not have much of the manifestation of the power of Baha'u'llah as much as we like to. Never given any public speeches. Hasn't really spoken to their foreign languages or anything. So it was in jail, Baha'u'llah. He just revealed the writings. They suffer all that suffering. Bab dies, Baha'u'llah is imprisoned, so that Abdu'l Baha might have a little freedom. And Abdu'l Baha was most of the time in jail, except at the end of his life, just a few years. And as soon as he was freed and emancipated and got out of the jail, see what happened in that little few years? The entire Western Europe was illumined with Abdu'l Baha. Imagine if Abdu'l Baha had all his time in freedom, what would happen then? If that freedom was for Baha'u'llah, what would have happened? But it didn't. It didn't. Baha'i Faith is one of those Japanese mortgage. 3, 4 generations they have to pay for it, that finally the last one claims that he owns it. Bab dies, Baha'u'llah gets imprisoned, Abdu'l suffers. All of it for freedom of Shoghi Effendi. So he could be free. And he was free. It's one of his unique things. The only one that has not suffered jail and imprisonment. He was free with all the freedom he had. No one ever had. He had. But all those prices had to be given. So in the Baha'i Faith we have 2 types of infallibility. Abdu'l says in the Some Answers question, the essential and the one that's conferred upon. Universal laws of justice, he says, does not have the essential sinlessness, which means infallibility, but is conferred upon it. Shoghi Effendi is essentially, innately, he is infallible. So is Bab, so is Baha'u'llah, so is. So when Abdu'l says, oh guys, Shoghi Effendi is after, he's not appointing him, he's just reporting to us who's coming. Remember his words, to Miss F. Drayton. He says, let's read it again. Endowed with the most perfect appearance. 1, 2, supreme capacity. 3, absolute perfections. 4, consummate power. 5, unsurpassed might. And he says at the end, ages and centuries will bear traces of him. Do I know him? Little bit. The might of Shoghi Effendi is so amazing to me. You got to be those days from Iran. Even now, here, I suffer racism, I suffer, He's in Oxford in England, all among the white peoples, Anglo-Saxons. You know what they would look at an Iranian? Not him. I'm always amazed to see how he controlled all these basically 27 hands of the causes that are around him. They were like a little boy looking at the king. And he's from Iran. There are so many things in the way. Races, colors, nationalities. And these guys from the West, they're not so trained with the faith and religion. What did they see in him? They were totally in love with him. You have to read all their accounts. He's the most powerful one. That really, because it crosses the Middle East and comes around and in fact, as a matter of fact, shows the power of God. So, he is not just simply because Abdu'l said so, he's a guardian. No, no, no. Even in the word of Bible and Islam, he's been prophesied as is coming. And Abdu'l speaks of him in such a language that's amazing. Okay, so let's look part of this. Part of the will and testament of Abdu'l. O my loving friends, after the passing away of this wronged one, which is himself, it is incumbent upon the Aqsam branches, which are the members of the family of Baha'u'llah, the Afnan twigs, the member of the family of the Bab, of the sacred lot tree, the hands of the cause of God, and the loved ones of the Abha beauty, to turn and to Shoghi Effendi. The youthful branch branched from the 2 hallowed and sacred lot trees, and the fruit grown from the union of 2 offshoot of the trees of holiness, as he is the sign of God, the chosen branch, the guardian of the cause of God, he unto whom all the Aqsan, the Afnan, the hands of the cause of God, and his loved ones must turn. He is the interpreter of the word of God, and after him will succeed the firstborn of his lineal descendant. He's talking about two lot trees. And the Quran also says, when the two oceans, they meet each other, they mix. It seems after Baha'u'llah, there was not enough gene left. Abdu'l, when it comes, just extract all the power that was generated since Adam to create Baha'u'llah's body, to bear and manifest that power. And when it comes to Abdu'l Baha, it's just exhausted all. There was nobody that could, from the family of Baha'u'llah, to bring Shoghi Effendi. He is so mighty that the family of the Bab and Baha'u'llah, they both had to join, because his mother is descendant of the Baha'u'llah, which is the daughter of Abdu'l, and his father is the lineage of the Bab. The family of the Bab and Baha'u'llah together had to combine, to join, to create that body, to manifest the power that emanates from the mission of Shoghi Effendi. Okay. He continues. The sacred and youthful branch, the guardian of the cause of God, as well as the universal house of justice, to be universally elected and established, are both under the care and protections of Abha beauty, under the shelter and unerring guidance of the exalted one. May my life to be offered upon for both of them, between Baha'u'llah and the Bab. Whatsoever they decide is of God, that is universal house of justice and Shoghi Effendi. Whoso obeyeth him not, neither obeyeth them, had not obeyed God. Whoso rebelleth against him and against them, had rebelled against God. Whoso opposeth him, had opposed God. Whoso contented with them, had contented with God. Whoso disputed with him, had disputed with God. Whoso denieth him, had denieth God. Whoso disbelieveth in him, had disbelieveth in God. Whoso deviated, separated himself, and turned aside from him, had in truth deviated, separated himself, and turned aside from God. May the wrath, the fierce indignations, the vengeance of God rest upon him. The mighty stronghold should remain impregnable and safe through the obedience to him who is the guardian of the cause of God. It is incumbent upon the member of the house of justice, upon all the Aqsan, the Afnan, the hands of the cause of God, to show their obedience, submissiveness, and subordinations unto the guardian of the cause of God, to turn unto him and be lowly before him. He that opposeth him and opposed the true one will make a breach on the cause of God, will subvert his words, and will become a manifestation of the center of sedition. What else do you want to know about Shoghi Effendi? Bible, Islam, the Baha'i Faith, all of it. Not just in the Will and Testament. I just read it for you to illustrate what Abdu'l says. So if you want to question Joel, these things, then everything has to be in their questions. All the writing of Baha'u'llah are the writing of Abdu'l. Abdu'l Baha's writing, many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, probably a couple of hundred volumes. He wrote so many letters. This one is especially has kept it, and everyone knew of this, you know. So, but time is getting seriously late. Because I want to talk about what Shoghi has done. We're looking at the translations of the Shoghi Effendi, of the writing of Baha'u'llah, and we're taking it for granted. We think, oh, somebody could have done it, somebody did. The best that we had at that time, before Shoghi Effendi started to translate this thing, one of them is Marzieh Gale. And you know, that Ali Qoli Khan. Marzieh Gale is still in circulation, is the 7 valleys and 4 valleys. I have put videos about 7 valleys, that this entire translation is just so many mistakes in it. And she's authoritative translator, she was. But was not using Shoghi Effendi's, you see. She was on her own. If you look at those and the mistakes that are there in translation of the 7 valleys, then you can understand what Shoghi Effendi has done. You see, none of the Arabic and Persian translation has ever been done before Shoghi Effendi to these authenticities. This is not a simple work. I'm telling you that right now. You want to compare him to another person, there you got it, educated from United States of America, Marzieh Gale has translated, you read the translation, it's all vague, not understood even the subject, and as opposed to the translation of Shoghi Effendi. We didn't have that, but there would be no faith left for outside of Iran. That's it. I was in India around 1980s, didn't know English then. I was in Madras University. Mr. Rouhani knows, we were a few Persians. We had to take a second language. We all took Persian because it was simple for us. It was mother tongue. I went to one of these professors one day at the University of Madras, which was an Indian, but he was English professor as well as the Persian professors, and I thought, you know, to ask him a few questions. A couple of times I saw him. Then I gave him this book of certitude. Oh, he looked at a few lines, says, can I have that? I said, yes, I'm going to have a few questions from you. He mustn't have read the book because I saw him after a few days. He was totally astounded. He said, who has translated this? His translation, I gave him the original one. He said, I will give 20 PhDs to this man who has translated this book. Just this book, the Book of Certitude. I wanted to learn English. I said, I don't remember his name right now, unfortunately. I said, how so, sir? Could you maybe explain it a little bit? He says, I'm amazed with the daring power of this man introducing so many phrases to English language, like day a star of knowledge, day a spring of renunciations. These things are so elusive. You want to say these things. These are new phrases. The consternations of the day of resurrections. So many other words that are so difficult. I have not seen anybody to put it so beautifully, to put the whole paragraph as one sentence, and yet there's no mistakes in it, none. And then to begin with, to translate this hard, really hard Islamic words into English. None of the Persian cannot even think of the Arabs even before Shoghi Effendi. There's this invocation to the name of Muhammad. Whenever they say Muhammad, the Prophet God, they say Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Shoghi Effendi says, may the greeting of God and his salutation be upon him. So beautifully. So I said, my God. He said, yeah, there are many points. How long it took him to do it? I said he has done a lot of translation. And this is just a fraction of the work he did. He said he is divine. He has divine power to translate this into this, he said. You think without it, we could be left with what? With Marzieh Gale translations? Even right now, after the standard set by Shoghi Effendi, Adib Taherzadeh, the translator of the Universal Laws of Justice, he has done a translation from the Tablet of Wisdom. There he has mistake. Cause not that he doesn't know English, not that he doesn't have the word of Shoghi Effendi in this dictionary, it's just that he didn't understand what the tablet is. He says that mistranslated. He says that nature is the will of God. Well, that's just totally blasphemous, preposterous. Nature is not the will of God. Then we're agnostics. The will of God creates the nature. Nature is not the will of God. But that's how he understood the original one. Without this, a standard of Shoghi Effendi and his words and his dictionary that he has said, we would be lost. The Baha'i Faith would be lost. Gone, gonzo. Who is going to translate these things? I got interested. I said, you know what? Me, in fact, and Mr. Rouhani decided to put a project. We're going to take the book of certitude in Persian and in English. We're going to go word by word to understand what he says. On the very beginning, I came across, he says that, the wine of certitude. I said, Lord, this is not the wine of certitude. In original, he says, the cups of certitude, the chalices of certitude. The word he uses is ko'us. Ko'us-e-iqan. Iqan means iqan, the book of iqan, certitude. Ko'us is a plural for the word ka'as. Ka'as in Arabic means cup, chalice. So ko'us-e-iqan clearly is the chalices of certitude, or cups of certitude. Why Shoghi says wine of certitude? How do we solve this? You know, I wasn't like Joel, jumping into thinking Shoghi Effendi maybe misread something. I said, guys, we have to do some investigations. We got some books, we studied, different lexicons, different dictionaries. We actually found out the word kas has 4 plurals. Kas can be called kasat, it could be called akus for the plural, ko'us, akus, kasat, ko'us, and something else. However, in one dictionary it says, when the word kas is used in the plural form, ko'us, only the form of ko'us, not akus, not kasat. When it is ko'us, the ko'us itself means wine as well. Wow! How did he know that? And makes totally sense. Wine of certitude, because certitude is something that goes into your soul. It's just like a wine. Cups cannot have certitude. It is the wine of certitude. So, brothers and sisters in the West, we cannot even read in a true meaning and the purport of the book of certitude. We have to read that of the Shoghi Effendi. This is not even translation, it is actually interpretation as well. There are so many things I can tell you. The miracle of the knowledge of Shoghi Effendi. Just I remember another one. You know these archangels that you have, Mike and Michael and Gabriel and whatnot. We have in Iran too, in the Islam. They call it Mikael for Michael and Jibrail for Gabriel. And then there is Israfil, the one that with a trumpet it says the day of resurrection has arrived and the death will arise. That particular archangel is called Israfil. Go find a translation for it. Shoghi Effendi says it's seraph, S-E-R-A-P-H. Nobody can translate this. Where did he get his knowledge? So, thanks to him that he left these 7 valleys around so we can compare to know where he's coming from. Without him, we were dead. Nobody could speak a word of Baha'i Faith into English language. The ideas could come, but then our translation would be like translation of Bible, English from the Hebrew. It's totally lame. Lots of mistakes in it. Tons of mistakes. Nothing like it. I'm not going to get into that right now. So, to put, according to the professor that does the translation, it says if somebody wants to take up a translation of the Book of Certitude with so many strange verbs and words into English, that alone, it takes a lifetime, he says, to do a proper job. And the person has to be gifted and all that. But Shoghi Effendi did so many other translations besides that. How could he not be manifestation of God? Manifestation of the power of God. Don't take me that I'm saying he's the manifestation of God. No, he's manifesting the interpretations power of God. That his office is the office of interpretation. Yet Abdu'l says everything he says God. So when you say infallible, then we can have too many infallibles. There's just one infallible. God is infallible. The one who comes in. Therefore, in reality, just simple logic. Look at the premises of the discussion. If Shoghi Effendi is infallible, Abdu'l is infallible, the Baha'u'llah is infallible, they are all the same. You can't say Baha'u'llah is more infallible. More infallible is a wrong word. More infinite is a wrong word. Infallible, that means there's no mistakes. Baha'u'llah, Abdu'l, Shoghi Effendi, they're all actually God manifesting in them. Different offices. One as a herald and then an elder, Baha'u'llah as the founder, and Abdu'l and Shoghi Effendi as the interpreter. Do not underestimate the power of Shoghi Effendi, brother. You want to do it, go ahead. I haven't seen him personally, but I'm not going to make the error. You know. This is one of the things he did. There are so many things he did. Definitely, I have not the authority even to speak about it, really. Now this is in English. Oh, look at this Arabic. And look at this Persians. I have seen it. Amazing. Most amazing. How he was just... So this is the only religion in the world that where the Middle East is the sources of all the religion, or even Indians and Buddhism, the divine figure of God is master to both languages. Not so much Arabic and Persian, they're almost the same, but English, so many different sets of values. This is why all of Baha'u'llah, Abdu'l, they all died, suffered, just for him to be there, to do this. Otherwise, West will be completely deprived. In Iran, Baha'i Faith, I heard by the Muslims, by the Baha'is, Iranian Baha'i, a Turkish friend of mine. They said that at the time of Shoghi Effendi, Baha'is of Iran, they considered themselves as a Muslim, as a sect of Islam. They in fact would go to mosque, just like the Shiites, they had this chain on their head, and they were basically known as a sect of the Islams. No power, no distinction. Who brought them out of that into the independence? What kind of a power Shoghi Effendi has exerted? I'm just amazed sometimes. Because it was so hard for the Baha'is in Iran listening to a kid. He was only 25 years. Child, really. That's what the Bible says, a child. There's only 3 like him. Bob, Jesus Christ, and Shoghi Effendi. They're all 25 years. To come down and say to all the Baha'is in Iran that no more mosque, No more this, you have to have assembly. The entire assembly situation in all over the world is done by Shoghi Effendi. Nobody has done it. There's no assemblies. Go take a look. See how many Baha'is were in the world at the time of Abdu'l, especially outside of Iran. What happened at the time of Shoghi Effendi? Do you want to see a manager? And with the least amount of the opposition, really. What he did was 100 times worse than Bob taking the Iranians from the Islam into few things that he said. Bob, few new things, and it was hard for them. Couldn't see it. When Tahira took the hijab, not from his hair, still had this, she had this scarf. The guy cut himself out. It was that hard for him. Baha'u'llah, same problem. Many people became covenant breaker. The smallest things Baha'u'llah would say. They wouldn't like it. Abdu'l was in the same situation. Shoghi Effendi has exerted 100 times harder curriculum on the Baha'is to get them out of that situation that they've had in Iran or all over the world where there was no assemblies to formulate this huge, administrations. Please study social studies, compare it, detect, and you find that there is no more powerful of a person to have influence positively on the people to do all of this. What else can I say? And at the end of the day, he finds time to do a new set of standards to enter the Holy Land. He gathered all the books, all the originals. He did so much work. Unimaginable to me. I swear to God, I cannot see myself in a speck of a dust in front of him. I would suicide if God gives his mission to me. That's so hard to deal with all of this. People attitude of now, Baha'u'llah is just dealing with the Iranians and Arabs maybe. But now, Shoghi Effendi has to deal with so many attitudes and nationalities of all over the world. What a master of communication he was. What an encompassing power. There's nothing to explain him except those words of Shoghi, the word of Abdu'l. I like to read, when I look at him and what he has done. Thou shalt behold him endowed with the most perfect appearance, supreme capacity, absolute perfection, consummate power, and unsurpassed might. These are the words of Abdu'l that Shoghi Effendi brought it up. So, in my lame, tired, old contractors, that's who I am, language, I try to tell you a few things. But if you study in detail the life of Shoghi Effendi and what it means to bring English and Australian and French and Germans through all 27 of them hands of the cause and in all the countries everywhere else in the world with one short young man and rule over them. Sociologically impossible. Impossible. This capacity, it is not so much that's in him, it's not in us to be able to carry on with this mission. How beautifully he did. Now, of course, I have spoken to you about the unsolved mysteries and where all this, convolution is coming in the matter of guardianship. Don't let me to talk about that, because when I think of it, I cannot believe myself that if I understood his message written in his books that we every day read, that the stereogram message that was hidden in his writing, a letter to the elders. How I looked at it and I said, there it is. What an engineer he was. How to put it well together. I'm going to speak about that on the next time, and the fact about the Baha'i administration, or do we need an administration, or without it, where are we going to be? This is the next time. See you guys.